This is my most requested video ever, my most frequently asked question. We are going to unpack the concept of criticism and judgment for being feminine or for leading a more traditional lifestyle. Hello lovely feminine women, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate every time you leave me a comment and you like the videos, that you enjoy. All of this effort that we're putting into growing femininity and the community of more traditionally minded people as a whole does contribute to a kind of femininity revolution where we are pushing forward the narrative to include a forgotten group of women in today's society. As you have already guessed from the intro, and I'm a little bit nervous because I am going to attempt to answer to the best of my ability my most frequently asked question, which is how to deal with judgment and criticism for living a more traditional lifestyle, perhaps embracing homemaking or being a housewife, in addition to being a feminine woman and embracing your femininity, going through a feminine metamorphosis. This garners a lot of attention, especially if you are in the beginning stages of your journey and you might not know exactly how to deal with the naysayers. Before we get into the topic, I do want to say that I'm not talking about the traditionally feminine archetype. If you watched my video about femininity archetypes, if you have not, I'm going to link it above as well as down below. You know that there are a multitude of feminine women in our community, and there are many different lifestyles that embrace femininity as well as traditionalism. I am solely grouping these two together because that is kind of like the population of people who consume my videos. Some people are here for femininity and some people are here for more traditional women content. Both of these themes is probably going to give you a little bit of judgment as well as criticism from people who are closest to you and society as a whole, so I thought it would be applicable to group them together into today's video. When I talk about being a traditional woman on this channel, I also want to specify that I'm talking about embracing family values as well as marriage, having children if that is something that is in your calling, and just generally adopting more old-fashioned values. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the prairie girl that we see on Instagram when we search cottagecore as well as slow living, although if that is your aesthetic, embrace it to the best of your ability. But what I'm just talking about are women who choose to live a simpler life. And when I'm talking about femininity, like I mentioned with the archetypes, I am just talking about a way of expressing yourself to the world that is perhaps softer and sometimes girlier. People like to say that we do not necessarily get criticism and judgment for being feminine as well as more traditional. However, if you are a woman who has had similar life experiences to mine, I was in STEM, I worked in STEM, and I studied in STEM, there are comments that are thrown around very casually talking about how women who live more femininely and traditionally are doing a disservice to other women. I think that this is wrong because we should embrace the lifestyle of a variety of women, and we should really celebrate our differences as well as our similarities. And I also think that it is a testament that many people in this femininity niche have grown their channels so large that there is an isolation felt by many of us, and there is a judgment and criticism that we have to deal with on a regular basis. I'm going to share with you how I handle this judgment and criticism, and like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, it could be very, very long, so for the sake of time, I am going to dive into the basics. But if you're interested in a part 2 or having me address this further in a Q&A perhaps, hit the like button to let me know. A big pillar to dealing with judgment for your lifestyle is understanding the context of where people come from. Perhaps you live in a certain part of your country, or you are surrounded in an institution like a university where the narrative of oppressed housewives and people who embrace femininity is often pushed. Now, there are women back in the day that of course lived this lifestyle that caused for them to be prevented from doing the things that they wanted to do to live a fulfilling life and from owning property and being able to go to the bank, etc., etc. And that's not what I'm talking about exactly. I am just talking about the everyday shame that women might feel for wanting to structure their life around family, or for wanting to dress more femininely or be a little bit girlier. An important key to understanding the context of where people are coming from when they judge you or criticize you is understanding this cultural narrative. It is understanding the fact that people are drawn to drama. It doesn't make for good TV, it doesn't make for good TikToks to hear about the housewife who decided to leave her career and found a fulfilling life at home raising her 2 children and embracing a traditional life with her husband, or the woman who embraced her femininity and this led to, like, I don't know, better job opportunities. These things aren't very sensationalized because they aren't dramatic. And that is also a big reason why I'm so passionate about the femininity revolution, because the more that we grow as a community entirely, the more that we can spread forward a message of positivity, and we can actually show the world that we are living this life that is extremely fulfilling to our preferences. A long time ago on my channel, if you've been a long-time subscriber, you will remember this, but I specified the difference between understanding constructive criticism as well as an insult. An insult will deal with your character, and constructive criticism will be surrounding a certain concept. I was also listening to a talk show the other day where the speaker had an excellent point. She was talking about the human tendency to kind of look at people's lifestyle as a checklist or grading an essay. When people talk to you about their lifestyle and it might be different from yours or their opposing belief, it is our human tendency to look at it kind of like an opportunity to grade an essay and to tell them all the places where they went wrong in their life and how it compares to ours. So keep that in mind before you rush to rebuttal somebody else's judgment of you by giving them a little bit of grace. This is going to help you be a more graceful woman, and it's going to help you develop in your femininity. It is the human condition to seek progress, to better our lives. That's why we are so fixated on goals, and that can be a beautiful thing, but we just can't let it get to the point where we are leaving behind a complete section of the population. I'm always also hesitant to talk about jealousy because I think that there is a tendency for us as women to write people off when they have criticism or something to say about our life or our choices as being just jealous. She is just jealous of us and I should just not listen to her at all. But that isn't always true. Sometimes it is true, and that is why you need to develop your emotional intelligence to be able to identify jealous people. And this is going to go back to the concept of the differentiation between a constructive criticism as well as an actual attack on your character, an insult. A person who is acting from jealousy is going to implement perhaps a passive-aggressive or just generally aggressive jabs at your character. Instead of being a concerned friend who might be worried about your husband leaving you, this person is going to label you in terms of your intelligence, for example, and your inability to pick a suitable partner, perhaps thinking that you are going to get divorced. It's going to be an actual jab at your character. We can give grace to people who do also feel jealousy for living a more traditional lifestyle, or for the fact that perhaps you are able to embrace your femininity more easily or find solace in expressing your femininity and immunity to a certain degree of criticism. Many women long for a simpler lifestyle, and there might be something that they are holding on to that prevents them from expressing their femininity. So it is important to understand that sometimes jealousy is more so a normal human reaction in them, and they have not done the inner work to deal with their jealousy. I myself used to be a very competitive and jealous person when I was in my teenage years, but because I was in pageants, because I did modeling, because I did a lot of sports and my parents put me in those situations, I learned a lot of the lessons in terms of the negativity that comes when you are a jealous woman. But not everybody has life experiences that cause for them to learn those lessons yet. And in that case, you're probably going to want to distance yourself from that person. This also goes further in another reason why I am really trying to build community in the femininity revolution, because if we provide women with the tools on how they can express their own femininity and how they can potentially live a more traditional lifestyle if that is something that they desire, equipping them with the necessary tools to perhaps make the budget work, the lifestyle work, taking the necessary steps to finding a life partner that also wants those things, is going to help empower them live the life that they were perhaps truly meant to live, rather than staying in this place of stuck jealousy and not being able to foster connections with other women. Because if you live in a place of jealousy and constant competition, that is an extremely sad life, because you are always kind of living in a place of adrenal fatigue. And that is another reason why I think that many people, many women particularly, are getting burnt out, because they are stuck in that place and they cannot open their hearts to feeling appreciation for other people because they are not living their life path, the one that they wish that they could. Now, let's move on to responding. How do you actually respond to criticism and judgment when somebody has something negative to say about you, or when you hear that somebody has been talking negatively to you? Now that you have a better grasp on the context and you can give them grace, this is going to be the second step that you need to adopt. One of the most surefire ways to elegantly really handle the situation is to de-escalate the emotions and the situation associated with the judgment. And one of the best ways to do that is to ask them questions, to prompt a response, rather than having a comment that is perhaps harsh that you're going to respond with. Ask them questions about why they think that, what caused for them to think the way and respond the way that they did. I have adopted this own technique when dealing with my family members, and it kind of de-escalated the conversation, particularly when we were talking about my lifestyle as a housewife, to the bare bones of them feeling a little bit worried in terms of my competency to handle myself if I were to be divorced, for example. And this de-escalated the situation where I was able to bring the conversation to a point where I was better able to equip them with confidence in how they raised me and the tools that my parents have given me to be able to rebuild my life if necessary. However, if you are dealing with a more aggressive person, the best way is to shut down the conversation immediately. This could include not responding, changing the subject directly, or telling them a simple statement of, I think that we don't see eye to eye on this particular topic, and I would rather not focus on it in conversation because I don't want to jeopardize our relationship. I think we should just agree to disagree on this because we have so many other things that we are on the same page on, and I think that we could more so talk about that instead of this particular issue where we disagree. Something like that. Because if you are dealing with a jealous person or a narcissistic person, they are going to want to win at all costs. And the way that you actually do win against a narcissist is to actually disengage and to not fuel the fire. And if the statement that I just told you is kind of too nice to say to deal with this particular person, the best thing you're going to want to do is try your best to ignore them. I know that it is very difficult, but you want to ignore them and you want to proceed with your own life and try not to get into conversations, especially one-on-one, where they are going to bring up that same subject. Also, if you're dealing with a friend or a family member, perhaps give them grace once. I have a friend who talks a lot about how she could never stay home because it's not her personality. Some people could take the comments that this particular individual is saying and they could take it to heart as an insult, but instead of reacting the first time, let it go, because you might end up realizing that that person actually doesn't mean it and they're just trying to get at something else, a totally different subject. She was just trying to get at her own preferences for a fast-paced work environment and a constantly busy schedule rather than an insult about housewives. That's not what she was trying to do at all. But if I was to react the first time she would have said it, I wouldn't have been in a position to actually see that. And you don't want to jeopardize your family relationships and your friendship relationships over one comment one time, because nobody is going to be the exact clone of yourself, not even your spouse. You're not always going to be on the same page, and that is a big proponent of femininity. You're going to have to try to learn how to understand people and be a little bit more compassionate. In the last pillar, I want to talk about dealing with judgment, criticism for your traditional lifestyle or being a feminine woman, and that is to do the inner work. Comments hurt. I have filters on some of my comments on the YouTube channel because even though I would consider myself a resilient person, there are certain jabs that get at me, and I am kind of, a little bit envious about the content creators who have other people who filter their comments for them, but I have chosen to actually be more active in the comments section. This is the community and the approach that I take to my personal channel, so I do have to deal with those negative comments once in a while. The best remedy to this situation is twofold. First, you have to develop your confidence. You have to really cultivate your life to the extent that you love it. Nobody's life is going to be perfect, but you actually want to live out your life calling. That is a word that I have said countless times in this video. But the more that you embrace your role, whether that be as a homemaker, as a feminine woman, the more that people are going to get used to you presenting yourself this way. But you're also going to be like ripping off the band-aid countless times in building your confidence to be able to show yourself to the world this way. Just because you are not society's picture of a strong, independent woman doesn't mean that you are not strong and you are not capable of independence. Which leads me to my next point. You need to have some cheerleaders in your life. I have some friends that are personal cheerleaders that I can just vent to, and likewise they can do the same. And same thing with my husband. I find that with a lot of masculine husbands though, you have to be a little bit cautious because men like to often, doesn't mean that women can't either, but I'm just saying on average, like to just solve the problem, and sometimes you just need to vent the problem. You know, the problem's not going to go away. You know, that mean person who made a comment about you today at lunch in the workplace isn't going to go away, and you don't necessarily want to fix the situation because you might be dealing with a narcissistic person. So you just want to vent about it so that you can build your confidence. Find those cheerleaders. If this channel has to be a cheerleader for you, I know some people do vent their emotions in the comments section. That is a good way to do it if you don't have somebody in your life that you can do that with. There are also message boards on Reddit. There are other YouTube channels. You can do it on Instagram, but find whatever works for you. You can reach out to me, you can comment here. You understand what I'm trying to say. You need an outlet. You need a cheerleader. You need somebody to cheer you on. Those are all the concepts that I wanted to talk about today, but like I mentioned in the beginning, this is really a deep topic to unpack, so I would love to unpack it further. If you have more questions, I could write them down, address them in a Q&A, or do a part 2. I will have to explore the options depending on the feedback I get from this video. I appreciate you all, and I'm sending you so much love. I hope that you have a confident week and you're better able to deal with judgment and criticism in your life as a traditional or more feminine woman. Bye-bye.